What is good, guys? Welcome back to the Benefit Podcast, bringing you everything you need to know about living your best life. And the title of this week's episode is one that I'm sure most of you are probably going to read and think, well, of course the answer is no. Like, of course you can't lose weight if you're in a calorie surplus, because calorie surplus, by very definition, means you're eating more calories than your maintenance level, which means that you're going to gain weight. And you are absolutely correct in saying that. However, there's an interesting question, and the reason I'm recording this one in slightly longer format, someone that I speak to a little bit backwards and forwards on socials and through WhatsApp as well, they asked a really interesting question, and it was one that I did just want to dig a little bit further into. I went backwards and forwards with them a little bit, sent them some voice notes and stuff expanding on it, but I thought it'd be an interesting topic. So the question, just to read the question directly as they asked it, they were talking about, at the moment they are trying to lose weight, but what they also have a condition, and it means that activity levels are quite difficult to come by. It means that their energy levels at different times take a real dip. And the context of this conversation was that what they typically find that they can do is that they can diet for a short period of time before their body just becomes really, really lacking in energy. And then they almost feel like they need to eat a bit more just to like stabilize things again and push again. So almost in this cycle of like lower calories, pushing a deficit, and then calories get bumped. The question that they asked, if I eat a few days in a surplus, then a few days in a deficit, can I still lose fat slowly, or do I need to be in a deficit more consistently to lose any fat? And it's a really interesting question, and it's one that people probably don't necessarily think about, but might actually be doing anyway. So, this particular individual was talking about it being a little bit more controlled and a little bit more structured. A few days a week of deficit, a few days a week of surplus. How would that look over time? You might be doing this unknowingly by, being good or dieting Monday to Friday, and then using the weekend as an opportunity to just down tools a bit, to just relax on the diet, to eat whatever you want. So what you could be doing is having 5 days in a deficit, Monday through Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday, you could well be in a calorie surplus. Now, whether you're going to lose weight over time depends on the relative size of these things. And I'm just going to use some numbers here because I think, putting some numbers to this might help someone to conceptualize a little bit easier what's going on. So let's just say, for ease of numbers as well, the maintenance calories that you're aiming for are 2,000. So maintenance level for you, with the amount of activity you're doing, with however many gym sessions, however many steps, however much cardio, whatever all of that stuff is going on, 2,000 calories is the level at which you neither gain nor lose weight. It's your maintenance level of calories. So to create a deficit, we could go into a 500 calorie deficit, and then that would be 1,500 calories a day. And a surplus might be 500 calories more than maintenance. So that might be 2,500 calories. So even within a single week, if you were to eat in a deficit for 4 days of that week, even 5 days of that week, so let's say that you ate 1,500 calories Monday through Friday. So over the course of those 5 days, you've technically created a calorie deficit of 2,500 calories. If you then have the weekend where you eat 2,500 calories a day, and each of those days is therefore a 500 calorie surplus, taking from that 2,500 calories that you created the deficit from, you're then going to reduce that by the 1,000 calories that you created the surplus from. And technically, you would still be in a deficit for that week of 1,500 calories. Now, is that a massive deficit over the course of a week? No. Is it going to mean that weight loss should still happen? Yes, but it's just going to happen at a slower rate. If you were to rethink that a little bit, and if you were to have, say, 4 days a week of the deficit of 500 calories, that's a 2,000 calorie deficit. 3 days a week where you were in a surplus of 500 calories across the week, you would still be in a deficit, but it would only be a 500 calorie deficit. So again, progress is going to be even slower. If you rethink that a bit more about, okay, so what if I could go 3 weeks in a deficit? So for 3 weeks, you're in a deficit of 500 calories a day. You're going to end up being in a deficit of about 10,000 calories across 3 weeks. So even if you were then to decide that you were going to have a cheat meal, cheat day, which I don't particularly advocate, by the way, but if that's what you wanted to do, and even if you overate your calories for that particular day by 3 or 4,000, you would still technically, across that 3-week period, be in a reasonable calorie deficit, 6 or 7,000 calories. So the very idea, or the original question that I was asking about whether you can lose weight in a calorie surplus, does require a little bit more thinking. It's not necessarily that, like, if you were consistently in a calorie surplus over time, your body weight's going to go up. So the answer to that original question is no, if that calorie surplus is in existence for a period of time. If that calorie surplus is more of like an individual day within another period of time that you are in a calorie deficit, then the answer is yes, you can lose weight whilst periods of calorie surplus happen. All of it's about relative size. It's about timeframes being worked towards. It very much depends on the situation and the circumstance. You know, for most people, if you're thinking about like doing this, getting into fitness, losing weight, losing fat, and trying to make it fit in within like normal life, again, quote unquote, because what we're looking at do is improving those normal life habits. But, you know, most of us are going to have like birthdays that we might want to celebrate, or partners' birthdays, or kids' birthdays. There's going to be a few of those things dotted around. You probably go on holiday at some point. You know, if you look at this as like a much bigger picture, if you look at this across the course of 6 months or 12 months, even if, you know, you were to have 3 months of that year where you were in a calorie surplus, as long as the other 9 months of the year you were in enough of a deficit to outweigh that surplus, you are still going to see progress happen. Now, you know, I think one of the things that I've mentioned there is about the surplus being much more controlled, and actually it's still having targets and guidelines, and it being 500 calories above maintenance. I think this is where a lot of people, you know, potentially do things wrong. Like, it's very, very easy because, you know, if you're not really conscious of what you're doing, it's very, very easy to go, you know, Monday through Friday, you could be in a reasonable calorie deficit. It doesn't even need to be as aggressive as 500 calories, but, you know, you might be in a calorie deficit every day, Monday through Friday, 300 to 500 calories a day. So you're talking about, you know, anywhere between 1,500 and 2,500 calorie deficit for those 5 days. You can very, very easily undo all of that hard work and even push to the point where you're in a surplus for the week by going a bit crazy at the weekends. You know, if that means that you start eating out for breakfast, lunch and dinner, you have a night out on Saturday where you consume a load of alcohol, you have the pizza or kebab at the end of the night. Sunday you feel like death, so you start to eat and reach into all the junk and convenience food. Before you know it, that 2,500 deficit that you had Monday to Friday, you've completely wiped that out, and you've added another 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 calories on top. So actually for that week, you're in a calorie surplus. So you do need to keep those things in mind. Like, you can't just, there needs to be a degree of control. You know, there needs to be a period of time where you are actually in enough of a deficit that even if the situation, you know, presents itself that means that you want or need or can or have to be in a calorie surplus, you've done enough of the hard work that the surplus that you have for that one particular day or meal doesn't push you into a surplus over the period of time. So that might have made absolutely no sense at all. I hope it has made some sense. If there's anything in there that you would like clarifying, please do feel free to get in touch at Ben Howard Fitness on all of my socials. ben@benhowardfitness.com is the email address. If you want to comment below, or wherever you happen to be watching or listening to this podcast, please do, and I'll get back to you nice and quickly. But I hope everyone has had a really, really good week so far. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I hope you're enjoying this rather nice heat that we're having. Maybe not so much to sleep if it's anything there like it is where I am. Nice during the day. Nice to get a bit of sunshine, but yeah, pretty draining. So stay hydrated. And I'll be back again very soon for another episode.